Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Thinking Project. Of course, this is your host, Dalton Jensen. And if you're tuning in for the first time, thank you so much. If you're returning for the number of times that you've watched the podcast, thank you so much. And if you're watching this on YouTube, of course, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the like button. This helps me know what content to bring to you guys. And also, remember, stay tuned. I'm having more sales content, more podcasting content for you to consume here on YouTube in the coming days. But if you're listening to this, thank you so much for tuning in again. So without further ado, Billy Bateman joined me on today's episode of The Thinking Project. He is the founder, co-founder, CEO of ChatFunnels. We had an amazing conversation, and I really do believe that you'll enjoy this because that's the whole point of The Thinking Project, is to bring you vlogs and interviews with founders and creatives to help jumpstart your career, to help get those creative juices flowing in your brain so that you can start living the life that you've always wanted to live, because that looks different for everybody, and it should. So with all that being said, Billy Bateman, and please enjoy the interview. All right, we're rolling. Thank you so much for joining me, Billy. Thanks for being here. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Dalton. This should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've been on a podcast run. It sounds like podcast tour of sorts.
Yeah. We had our own podcast for a little over 2 years that I hosted and had a lot of fun doing that. But we decided to take a pause and say, okay, because like we do it to get more customers. It's like bottom line, like why we're doing it. And we had some success, but not enough that I was like, yeah, let's just keep rolling this in, you know? And we were like, okay, like let's take some other guys on the team and like let's get us on other people's podcasts. So our marketing team has been all in on trying to pump us up and get us on as many podcasts as we can. And so far it's been great because like you get in front of other people's audiences that had no idea you exist.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, podcasting, that's the way to do it. I really feel like it's the future. But you know, I like to bring that up whenever I know that somebody's doing like a big podcast tour, or they're doing a big, you know, they're trying to get their name out there as much as they can. One question that I like, you know, to start with before we kind of dive into what you have going on, right? Because you got a lot like ChatFunnels, you know, you've got your history in business, you know, MBA, but like to start, like what do you think is the main point of all the podcasts? Like what message are you trying to get out there the most?
Message. Well, first, like, dude, I'm all in on ChatFunnels. We're 4 years into this month, and we are all about helping customers, especially B2B customers or who businesses or who we serve, by helping them grow revenue. And we're kind of agnostic on how we do it, but our real goal is if you sign up to be a ChatFunnels customer, we're going to help you make more money. And that's what I like to do, is help businesses make more revenue.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And it sounds like ChatFunnels, you know, I was doing a little bit of homework on what that was and what you have going on there. It's big in the sales world right now, right? Like this kind of AI software that helps like pre-qualify customers. It's kind of scary to a lot of salespeople because you're like, because, you know, it's almost like, can they do a better job than the salespeople? And so it kind of brings up a lot of questions about the whole sales industry.
You know, one thing I'll say to that is, salespeople, you should be, some of them are going to be nervous, but honestly, where we found the most success for us and for our customers is it's the combination of the automation and the intelligence and the rules that you set up, and then bringing a person in at the right time. Like a chatbot, it'll close some deals or qualify some for you really well. But where it works really well is when you can have a chatbot do like an initial qualification and just say, okay, like, are they qualified enough to talk to somebody, and then get somebody in there right away. Like with our sales team, they get alerts all the time, not just even from somebody's chatting in, like, hey, we identify which companies are on our customers' websites. And if they match their ideal customer profile, or they're a company they're already in an open sales opportunity or a target account, our reps get alerted on their cell phone to say, hey, Domo's on the site, or Qualtrics, or Dirty Dough's on the site, whatever it may be, and they're like, oh, one of my accounts, I can send them a message right now. Or I've been emailing a couple people over there. I bet you, it's Jenny that I've been working with. I'm going to send her a text message or a LinkedIn message, and we're top of mind, and we get the conversations going. And it really helps with that time to close deals, cutting that down.
Yeah. Yeah. When you talk about, because I've been in the sales world for a little bit, and the topic of like getting pre-qualified customers through the pipe is always a big thing. So before we get into that, because I will totally nerd out about sales, I'll totally nerd out about the culture and everything like that. Take us through like your story in how you got to Chatbots. I mean, I know you've got a nice resume leading up to this, but what, and you mentioned before the interview we talked, right? It started out as like a consulting firm, like a service-based firm, right? And kind of grew into a software firm. So take us like through that whole journey of like how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Idaho, and I came down here to BYU, and I have an uncle who started inside sales, Dave Elkington, and
wow,
he said, "Hey, cool. You want to come work for me in marketing?" And like he paid me like minimum wage. Right. I had to fight because he was like, "Dude, you're my nephew, so like nothing's going to be given to you. You got to earn it around here." So I got started by working on their marketing team, and this would have been 2009. And I was managing paid search for them. I would do all kinds of marketing tactics for them. And like we did this big response audit thing for Dreamforce, which is Salesforce's big conference they do. And I mean, I was just doing all the grunt work for the most part there, but learned a lot. Dave and Ken are great marketers. And I didn't even realize like what I was learning while I was working there. And then I actually got a degree in real estate investment management, and went and worked for some commercial real estate brokerages for a few years, and I loved that. I figured out it wasn't something I wanted to do long term, but I love that industry, and there are tons of great people. It's very much still a relationship industry. And I think most industries really are. If you want to be successful, like you got to have relationships with people. Mm-hmm. But went back to school, did an MBA because I was like, I want to do something else. And when I got done with my MBA, Dave called me and he's like, dude, I'm looking to start a few new businesses, possibly software. But if we're going to do software, I want to start out with services and figure out like, what are we actually going to build? And is there a need before we build anything? And can we build anything unique? So we got in and started, I learned everything I could about. At the time, we were like, okay, let's get into this chatbot space. That seemed like a great place to get in. And so I spent like 2 months just in our spare bedroom in our apartment, like learning everything I could about chatbots. And my wife is like, are you going to get a job and start making some money? Because I'm working. And I was like, yes, just give me a little bit of time. And we were able to get some contracts with businesses and started out, and helped them. Hey, they went from using chatbots to book 10 meetings for their sales team a month to some of them all the way from 10 to 100 a month. And It was just through learning, okay, how do we optimize these chatbots? How do we engage them? We saw there were some things missing from the existing services out there, and eventually built our own. But for 2 years, like we were pretty much straight consulting. And built a whole team that does consulting, and then started building our own software and making that transition from like, hey, we're a consulting company to no, we're now a software company that also does some consulting. A little more challenging than I thought it would be.
Yeah. Well, so when you say a little more challenging than you thought it would be, what challenges were you anticipating, and what ended up being harder than you thought? Yeah.
So one challenge, I was anticipating like it would take some time for like people that knew us as a consulting company, whether they were like a customer or just somebody who knew of us, to realize, oh, like they have their own tool as well. Like I knew I knew like, dude, that's going to take time. I knew even internally, like kind of a culture shift would take some time to being like, okay, like we're about selling software and servicing software customers more than consulting. But one of the things I didn't think was going to be as hard was we thought, hey, we have this great base of customers that we do consulting for, and we've built this product that should be perfect for them. Getting them to move from, solution A or B that we were working with them on to our new solution, a lot more challenging than I thought it was. And part of that was like, we built our business servicing like mid-sized companies, with a few hundred employees. And it's easier to sell consulting to that kind of a company than software, because you've got compliance, you've got IT, you've got security. So we had a whole bunch of hoops, like besides making the tool just like work and get results, there's all this other just kind of like, I call it red tape work, and I hate red tape, that you have to do to sell to those customers. So we had to adapt who we were trying to sell to for a little bit, because it was like, okay, smaller businesses, there's hardly any red tape. It's like, is it going to work? Okay, it's going to work. Let's try it, or we think it's going to work. Let's try it. And so we had to adapt pricing, some of our packaging, and say, okay, like let's go down market and get a foothold there, and then we can go back up market while we get some of these other things worked out. And that was definitely a transition. And then even with the team, like I had my consulting team, and it took a while for them to be like, oh, like we actually work on our own software and provide the same service as when we were consulting on these other tools. It just took them some time to like make this shift that like the way they were going to get ahead within the business was being all in on our own product, rather than all in on what were now kind of our competitors' products.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when you were going through this, I mean, so you're a business owner now, right? Right. The founder of ChatFunnels, co-founder of ChatFunnels. So when you were going through your career, was owning a business something that was always you always had on your mind? Did it kind of fall into your lap, or like how did that come about for you?
Yeah, it was definitely something I've wanted to do for a long time. I served an LDS mission, and on my mission, I had my second or third comp. He was going home, and like he was done being a missionary. And we met this dude who had actually served his mission with my dad that was now inactive in the church. And he gave us this book, and he's like, this changed my life. And it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And and like, I'm still pretty new. So I'm like, oh, I was like, I'm not going to read the book. Like, I got these 5 books I can read besides scriptures. And my comp, he read it in like 2 days. Stayed up all one night reading it, and he's like, Bateman, this changed my life, you got to read it. And like, I think I lasted about 3 days after he finished before I was like, okay, I'm just going to read the book, because it's all he's talking about, and I got to do something. And after reading the book, I was like, dude, this whole like going to be an attorney thing, that's not going to get me ahead. And I didn't even think I'd like it the more I talked to people that were attorneys. I was like, I don't think I'm actually going to like that. I don't think I'm going to like that job very much. As much as I love debate.
Sure.
But so after reading that, I was like, okay, like I got to own assets, and businesses are a great asset. Real estate, like it kind of influenced me studying real estate investment and management, just because it was like, dude, that's a great way to build wealth. And then when I did my MBA, I actually went through, in addition to the normal MBA program at BSU, they have it's a startup incubator at the time. They called it the Venture College, and pitched a business, got accepted, started a business while I was in there, was out of business, like almost as quick as I was in business, but learned a ton by doing that. It was a lot of fun, and I learned a ton doing that. And that after I got done with school, I was like, I wanted to start another business, but I just got married. I'm like, okay, my wife's been working the last couple months while I'm in school. I need to get a job and support. And then when Dave called me, you know, like he didn't make any guarantees on how, you know, are we going to make money or not? But we both thought, hey, it'd be stupid to turn down an opportunity to work with Dave on a business.
Oh, yes. I mean, and from what I know about InsideSales.com, I mean, they're crushing it.
Yeah, they did very well for a long time. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, that's really cool. I think what really resonates with me about that story is, you know, at least when I hear it, it's about you just like waiting for the right opportunity.
Yeah.
And like taking the right time, right? So I like this, right? Because inevitably when you talk about like entrepreneurship and like starting a business, people will come into the business world of like all of the stories you hear of like college dropouts working under their, you know, working in their dorm for 100 hours and like, you know, and then making it. And it's like, that's not the only way, right? Like you can go through your career and then figure out like, hey, there's an actual need and then kind of go from there.
Yeah. And like, I would tell anyone, like, if you want to start a business, like, just go start something. Like, I wish I'd done it sooner, you know? I wish I'd just, like, after my undergrad, not married, you know, not that I had any money, but it was like, dude, if it doesn't work, right? If it doesn't work, like, I can live in my truck, you know?
Yeah, there's low risk. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
you
like,
don't have all of the overhead.
Like when I went back to do my MBA, my wife, we were dating at the time, thought I was crazy because I lived in my 4Runner for the first month until I found a place that I thought like I wanted to live that was cheap, and like I thought I'd get an apartment, but I didn't have a job when I was moving back to Idaho, and nobody would rent to me because I didn't, even though I could pay it all up front. They're like, no, you don't have a job. We're not going to rent you.
Isn't that
it was
crazy?
It was crazy.
That wild?
And then they wouldn't, like, my parents were like, yeah, we'll co-sign, you know, like, we know you're good for the money. Like, it's there in your bank account. And then they're like, oh, they're out of state. Not going to they can't co-sign. I was like,
wild.
This is the real estate. I love real estate, but man, it has a long way to go. It is such an old school industry in so many ways.
Really, though, it really is. Like, I know, you know, and there's a few companies that are kind of like disrupting that, but man, real estate's wild. And just like, well, and to be honest with you, not even just the real estate, but like the whole loan industry by itself is really just kind of archaic. I mean, I was talking to some bankers and like vendors, and I sent them a Zoom link. They were like, let's have a meeting. I'm like, all right, here's a Zoom link. They're like, nah, we can't use Zoom. I'm like, what are we doing? They're like, Microsoft Teams. I'm like, dude, I didn't even know Teams existed. Like, what the heck are you guys doing?
They couldn't, you know. Well, that's interesting. They would do Teams, but not Zoom. That's weird.
It's very strange. And it's just one of these things. It's just these archaic, you know, kind of rules.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I'll talk to somebody one day. But, you know, before we got into your story, which is amazing, by the way, we were talking about kind of the idea behind ChatFunnels and how it's disrupting the sales industry, right? Because this is a big thing that, like, as a sales trainer, like I train businesses and teams and individuals on selling. The biggest thing that I tell them, like if I'm talking to an entrepreneur who's trying to get sales, I'm like, you need to automate as much as you can the qualifying process.
Yep.
That's a big deal. Because like you don't want people coming through the pipe who just aren't for better, you know, and it's not anybody's fault other than like you just get people who come through the pipe who are just not qualified most of the time.
You know, I would push back just a little bit on that because like you got to qualify as much as possible, but have you ever met an AE who was like, man, I got too much pipeline. I have too many meetings and you got to take this away from me. Like no.
Right.
And then they're always like, when they're not hitting numbers, they're like, well, you know, these leads are shit. You know, like that's what they'll say. Like they may not say that word, but like that's what they'll say.
Yeah, that's what they'll say for sure.
But I would push back. Like as a business leader, there's a fine line. Like if everyone is really, really qualified, the salespeople are more like order takers. And at that point, it's like, dude, I could just fair. I could get somebody else that isn't as qualified to do this job. Like, so like sometimes there's a line there is what I'm getting at. It's like, if everyone's qualified that's getting through, you're probably overqualified.
Yeah.
Is what I think. And you're missing out on some opportunities. Good point. Even though you're going to have meetings for your sales guys where they're like, why the hell did I talk to that dude? Then,
yeah.
But dude, they're going to get opportunities they wouldn't have had before.
That's a great point. You know what? Now that you say that, there was when I started in the car business, they had a saying really similar about just like, you know, if you don't have so many, like, actually, that's where I kind of learned how to train. And one of the lessons that they taught us was like, if your closing percentage is too high, you're either lying or you're not talking to enough people.
Yep. No, for sure.
Know?
For sure.
So I agree with you there. That's a great point that you brought up.
Yeah. No, I cut you off. I'll let you keep going.
Well, you know, when you talk about chatbots, though, I think that's a great way to kind of help automate the process. And the AI is getting scary good now, man.
Yeah. So
the AI chatbots are scary good.
You know, they're good and they're also not. And like we do some AI, but a lot of what we found actually works best is, you know, like it's really cool to say, oh, we have this AI chatbot that will do like everything. But what you'll find is like most people who buy that, unless you have like a whole team of like junior engineers, essentially like training that bot, it kind of just does okay at everything. It doesn't do great at anything. So we let our customers build essentially like logic trees that the bots will execute. And we found that's a lot more effective for people because like somebody comes to your website, you know what you want them to do. Like you have a process that you're like, okay, somebody comes to our site, they're going to get information. If they're interested, maybe they're going to sign up for a free trial. Maybe they're going to fill out a contact us form. Maybe they're going to fill out a form to request a demo. You can take a bot and like okay, so if we had the demo request, well, what questions are we going to ask? We can put that into a chatbot really easily. And we found that people actually will answer more questions, fill out more fields of information through a bot than if you just put the static form up there. And then you can also do some routing, bring somebody in to talk to them right away. And if they're available, like just start chatting with them. And then even connect your calendar and let them book a meeting right there if they're qualified as well. If they're not qualified, you figure out a nice way to tell them, okay, like we'll get back to you, or you should go check this. You should go check this contact out and go talk to us. Come talk to us when you're a little bigger, or you're using a different tool or whatever it is, you know. So there's a lot that can be done and automated there. Now we've even taken it another step further past the bots. Like when you come in as a customer for us, there's quality, like our customers are B2B businesses. So beyond the person, they're also qualifying the business. Like, is it a fit for us? So what we do is we tie into your CRM and we look at all of your current customers and we create a profile of those based on their industry, employee size, location, technologies they use. And then we give you that and say, okay, it looks like this is the profile for your ideal customer based on who your current customers are. And whenever companies come to the site that match, and we do a reverse IP lookup to identify which companies are coming to your website. Whenever those companies come to the site, we can give them a totally unique experience with the chatbots. And essentially, like, you already know the business is a fit. So like, let's take down some of the barriers and make it easier for them to talk to you than to talk to your competitors. And we can also alert your sales team so that if they see like, okay, you know, somebody from this company that fits our profile, Acme Painting, they looked at our pricing page. Well, we'll send a text message, let them know, hey, this is an ICP company, came to the site. If we already have an account owner designated for that person, it'll go to that rep. And then if they don't do anything at all, like they just come and they peruse, but they show intent, we'll go get contacts for the buying committee and automatically enroll them into email campaigns or a sales cadence campaign. Yeah,
that automation is just like invaluable, especially for a business owner, and especially for like, I mean, I don't know if like solo entrepreneurs would use this, but that would be just like invaluable because you can keep the pipe flowing and keep people engaged, because ultimately that's how you lose interest with people, is like they're not staying engaged. And so and that's really cool. So I don't know, I might have skipped over this question, and if I did, that's my bad. But when you were looking at starting Chatbot, why Chatbot? Like, what made you think like this is it versus any other kind of consulting?
Yeah. So at the time, there were a couple of companies, Drift and Intercom, that were really hot, and a lot of people were buying the tools. Yeah. A lot of people were buying it and getting mixed results. And so there was an opportunity to say like, okay, obviously people are interested in buying this type of technology. We also looked at how much money has been placed by the venture capitalist in this space, and there was a lot of money. And usually the VCs, like, they don't get every company right, that they bet on. But if you see like $100 million over the course of a few years go into a space like conversational marketing, like, it's going to be a thing. And so we looked at that, and we saw an opportunity to get in and do some consulting because of the mixed results people were getting. And so there was an opportunity to get help, because it's not like this Riverside, like we're using Riverside here. Pretty easy to get set up and get going. Like, Chatbots, like, you got to know what you're doing to a certain degree. Otherwise, like, you can install it and like turn it on, but it's not really going to work for you.
It's like garbage in, garbage out kind of thing.
Yep. So
that's what I've noticed too. But go ahead.
Yeah, and like, we try to make it easy with our product for people to get up and get going, but like, it still takes some optimization, some time.
Yeah. And the learning curve, though, for one of these, I mean, that would be the difference, right? Is with you guys, is the learning curve probably gets shortened a little bit so that people can get involved a little quicker, right?
Yeah. And like, we started as a consulting company, and it's still in our blood that like we get in there with our customers and like get into the details with them and say, here's how you're going to be successful, like, for your business. Like, we know the best practices that typically work, but then refining it to like, okay, this matches this company and what they're trying to do. That's where you really see things start to exponentially become effective.
Yeah, I like that. And so do you think your move from transforming, because I like this idea that you started as like a service and consulting, and then you moved to software. What kind of gave you, I mean, where was the inspiration for that move? And because I think it's a smart move. I think that, like, when you said that, I was like, dang, that's actually not nice, because consulting-based, service-based businesses are usually cheaper to start. There's not a lot of overhead because it's just you going to the company and using your knowledge, right? But then kind of like solidifying the game plan there and then moving over to software. I mean, what was the idea? Where did the idea come from? And then how did that, I mean, obviously it worked well, but like, tell us the process. Yeah.
Well, I've got to give Dave credit for this. Like, this is his play. So I'm not going to take credit, but like, he's taught me the play and how to run it at this point. So, like you said, service business, like, dude, like, I just got started with just me is how we started out. Like, the only thing we were putting in was like my time and like my internet connection to my laptop, So you can get started with a services business really easy, really cheaply. We got to learn the space and become experts. And like, if anyone's ever read, I'm sure a lot of people have read The Lean Startup. But one of the things they talk about in that book is you got to do 100 customer interviews before you like go and create any product or service. Well, one thing with consulting and that type of service business is every time you get a customer, that is like an in-depth customer interview that can go on for years, where you're seeing, okay, how are they using the tool? What are they happy with? What are they not happy? And it's not like, it's better than talking to somebody, because like, you can see what's going on like every day. You're in the trenches with them working on it. But that also allows us, once we transition to software, to like fund paying for developers out of a business that was already making money. Yeah,
that well, and the 100 customer interviews, when you mentioned that. So one of the things that I like write down in my journal that I have a notebook about that maybe one day I'll start like a newsletter on or something. But like, is the questions, right? So you do 100 customer interviews. I think that's great. But like, if you're not asking the right questions,
Yep.
It's like the chatbot, right? You're getting garbage in, garbage out. So what do you ask customers when you're doing these interviews to get really good data on how to move forward?
Yeah, I think that depends. That's a great question. And it depends on like what you're trying to do. So I'm going to go to another business. I mentioned I started a business while I was doing my MBA. And with that, the background was I grew up as doing whitewater rafting and kayaking as a kid. And even in college, did some of that. And so I started this business. I called it River Nerd. And we were helping people apply for permits on the Middle Fork and the main salmon rivers up in Idaho. And like your chances are like a fraction of a percentage to get these most of the time. Like I've been putting in since I was 16 or 17 and I've never drawn one. But
oh wait, so are you talking about you got to draw for a permit to go like down these rivers, like raft them?
Yep.
Whoa.
Yeah, so like,
holy cow.
You know, a lot of places you can just pull up and you're like, dude, let's go on a float trip, you know?
Yeah. Like I grew up in Iowa or Colorado,
Yeah, not here. You're going through wilderness areas. Like there's not a lot of camping. Like if they let everyone who wanted to go through this, the thing would be packed. So they limit the number of people that come down. And so drawing one of these permits is tough. And so initially I put together a guide that would show people the statistics based on historical applications, what their best chances were to draw. And we did a little bit of regression to forecast, okay, like let's take the things like day of the week and date and then project it out for this next year. And it was interesting. Like you still got up to like a 0.5%, I think was your best chance, you know, on like these 2 or 3 days, like you have 0.5% chance, which is better than awesome. Like the 0.1 or 0.08 you're going to get on other days. And, and nobody really wanted to pay for that. So I started talking to the people though, who were reading the blog and interacting with the content. And I started, you know, I was like, hey, can I talk to you? You know, and like I'd get on the phone with them. And I asked them, I was like, you know, would you pay for this? And they're like, no, I wouldn't pay for it. I was like, well, what would you pay for it? And they said, you know, I would pay if you could notify me when the cancellations are. Because when you draw a permit, if you no-show, they won't let you apply for, I think it's 5 years. So like if you know you can't go, you call the Forest Service. They're like, yep, can't use my permit. They would just post it online, like random times, and just say, hey, there's a cancellation for July 26th. And the first person to grab that and claim it got it. So I took that. I had 2 people tell me that. And like, I didn't wait around for the 100 at that point because I'm like, I think I know what people will pay for.
Yeah.
And then I asked a couple more people. And I was like, would you pay for this? Like, yep, I would pay for that. I think that's one of the most important questions to ask is, okay, you say you have this problem. I have a solution for you, whatever it may be. Would you pay real American money for this? And and if the answer is nah, if it's not like a resounding yes, because people will be nice to you for the most part, like yeah. If it's like, oh, I might pay for that, dude, that's not good enough. It's got to be like, yes, I will pay money for that. And then the next question is, how much would you pay? And if it doesn't make sense at that point, like every other question doesn't even matter, you know. And one question I love to ask our customers when, you know, like I try to get on 1 or 2 customer calls a week, and with customers that have been on board for a little while and used our tools, one thing I ask them is, okay, if I gave you a magic wand and you could make the product do one thing, what would that one thing do? Or fix one problem, you know? And the answers you get out of that, like sometimes they're crazy. It's like, wow, yeah, like that would be some magic to do that.
You're like, I would need an actual magic wand.
Yeah, I would need a magic wand to make that happen. But sometimes it's like, oh yeah, that's easy. And then it's like, oh, dude, that's real value. And like, you're not necessarily going to upcharge them, but it's like, oh, we can build out a whole new enhancement or feature set that can be an add-on, or just going forward for newer customers. Like that's an easier way to make money. So
Interesting. So how do you do this at scale? Because I'm sure there's somebody listening who might be in a position where, like, you know, like if you're at the beginning or if you're like in our position, like, yeah, I do the same thing like with my podcast. Like I treat my podcast as my business. So I'll ask people like, I don't know. I mean, like just the other day, it was like I used to release 2 episodes a week. And then I got just a bunch of listener feedback, and it was like, you only need to release 1. And so I was like, all right, well, shoot, they're asking me to do less work, essentially, right? So it's like, okay, I can do that. But if you're looking at like a scale, you know, you're trying to do this en masse. What does the process look like from there? Like, can you do that, or can you use Chatbot to do that?
Yeah, like you can do the NPS scores. You can use a bot to ask them questions, and like, it works to a certain degree, but. But
there's nothing like that personal touch.
Yeah. Like it helps you kind of. It's more of a barometer. I think is the way to really look at it. Like, okay, if the answers coming in through the NPS are generally good and they're, you know, within this, you know, kind of the range we usually get or trending up, okay, like things are going well. But the NPS scores like all of a sudden start tanking, like. The funny thing is most people aren't going to tell you. Like they'll give you a bad score and then you'll reach it. They won't leave any feedback. You'll reach out and you're like, hey, let us help you. Like we want to know why'd you leave us a 5 or a 4 or a 1, you know, out of 10. And they won't respond half the time, you know?
Yeah, I don't respond to those.
yeah, like nobody, not half the time, like almost all the time, they will not respond. They will respond. Sometimes you'll get that answer if they leave you a review somewhere and you're like, oh, okay, now I know the answer. We could have fixed that for you. I wish you would have talked to us. Or we already did fix that. Maybe you just didn't know how to do it, you know? But there is nothing that can replace like getting on calls with your customers or going to meet them and have lunch with them. And like, you don't have to do that with every customer, but, I really think like try to get on a call at least once a week with a customer. Get on your sales calls at least once a week if you're a business leader. And like whenever I've been kind of like, man, the business is not like going as well as I want it to. It's because I'm not doing those things as consistently as I should be. You know, like stay close to your customers and your prospects, and it'll help you figure out what you got to do next to keep growing.
Right. Yeah. Because in business, like and in sales, the same thing, right? Like in sales and in business, like we're just past this whole point of like customers not knowing things, right? Like generally speaking, we have well-educated consumers now who are just looking for, you know, specific, maybe, you know, like specific questions that need to be answered, because generally speaking we have like very educated customers, and so that makes for like a very competitive field where you got to like get to know, like you have to serve the one, right? And you got to like stay focused on like that whole process, which I think is like, you know, the reason that we're here, right? And like that's how sales has shifted too. Like we can't just like no more like, you know, barely giving enough information to get them to sign or anything like that. We got to go through like a whole process. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's part of why we built our solution is like buyers have way more information than you have on you than you have on them. And like, and it didn't used to, like 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. Like the sales guy held like, not all the cards, but a lot more of the cards. And the buyer was like, please give me the information I need so I can make a decision. Now, like, dude, they can find everything they want. Like, and if even if they're a current customer and they're like, man, I don't feel like this is cutting it for you, they can go look at your competitor's website and then their competitor will tell you, oh yeah, we can do that happen. We can make that happen for you, you know? And next thing you know, like you're out a customer. So you got to stay close to them and listen to what they're saying and communicate with them.
Perfect. And I think that's a great segue into something that we were talking about before the podcast that always gets me fired up to talk about. And that is company culture. Something that's culture is just a buzzword now. Like you go through LinkedIn, I don't think, like if you scroll through LinkedIn, I'll bet you $1 million you run across 3 words in the first 3 minutes: value, culture, and maybe like what's another buzzword? But like at least those two, right? Like value and culture. And they just, sometimes they bug me because they get thrown around so much that we lose the meaning, right? But, you know, and it sounds like we had a similar, you know, feeling towards that, but yours has since changed. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like creating culture. Yeah.
I used to be Mr. like, I was kind of like anti the, here are our company values and like who we are, like that kind of stuff. 'Cause at jobs where I was just an employee, we had that stuff, and I kind of just felt like it was BS. Especially like one job I had, like we had all this stuff, and then I would see like what the owners were doing, and I was like, yeah, you don't do that at all.
Right. Yeah. It's like, this is definitely bullshit.
Yeah. I was like, this is total bullshit right here. But, so like we didn't do anything like that for a long time. It wasn't until last year that we really put something in place. And I noticed, it was because, hey, I forgot to turn my ringer off. I'm sorry.
Ooh, hey, you're good, man. Don't worry about it.
All right. We can edit that out. About a year ago, I noticed like, man, we were having some culture problems. Like we had one team with its own culture, and they thought certain things were important, and then we had another team, and they thought we should be doing another, you know, like, and like I kind of didn't even like coming into work for a little while because I was like, dude, this is not the business like Dave and I built. And so we sat down with our leadership team, and we put together, got the mission statement up on the wall so everyone could see that. We'd had that for a long time. We even put in a belief statement of like, here's, you know, what we believe the future of this industry is going to be. And then we have four pillars. And we talk about them every week, like in our company lunch and / meeting. We go through the mission statement, our belief statement, our pillars. We take one of the pillars, we talk about it, and it really has changed things. And I love it. So, cause it's like, okay, like these are the kind of people we want. And like, we even tell people when they come in the interview now, it's like, okay, here's our pillars and what we believe. And here's what those actually mean to us. And cause like you could take a word and you're like, oh, scrappy. Okay. Like I'm scrappy. Maybe you are. Maybe you're scrappy the ChatFunnels way. Maybe you're not. And we just tell them like, hey, if you're not down with this, that's cool. Just don't take the job. But like, just so you know, like this is how we operate around here. And and I think it's been big for us. And even like people get, you hire people, and sometimes you realize like, man, they just don't fit the culture, and you can figure out a nice way to move on for both you and them. But like, you got to have the right people on your team, especially when you're like under 50 employees. Like one bad apple will ruin a basket real quick.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so, but that is interesting when you talk about that as a way of culture. And I think that's kind of what we move towards. And I think that generally speaking, that's what people mean, right? Is like, what are the values that you drive your company?
Yep.
Cindy Tetro, the owner of Brandless, was on my podcast. She talked about, like, what do you celebrate and what do you tolerate?
Yep.
As company drivers. And I thought that was amazing. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do lately with this podcast is like, just kind of break some of these things down, because like the podcast is called The Thinking Project. And that's what I wanted people to do, is like, open your mind. Like when you see this word of culture, like, are you just thinking about it as like what you see on LinkedIn when somebody posts ping pong tables?
Yeah.
And it's not like culture, you know what I mean? Or are you like taking it and like really considering like what it means, right? Because culture outside of Silicon Slopes is very deep. Like it's like they're like, when you look at like, I'm Polynesian, and so like culture for us is like a big, and I mean, it's big for everybody, right? I'm not just saying one thing, but like it's deep. And so like, that's why it always bugged me, because like, can't throw around that culture word in vain, man.
Yeah. And it's the same. Like, I hate it when people are like, we're all a family at work. And like, it's like kind of, but not really. Like
like we're more of a team.
Yeah. Like, like it's a team. But I agree with you. Like, culture's not ping pong tables or catered lunch every day. Like those are just things, Culture is like the values. Like, how do you expect people to act when they're at work? Like, you can't like early on, like I could just kind of force the culture because I was working with everybody every day, like whether it was 10 minutes or 2 hours I spent with them, like they spent a lot of time with me, with Dave. They knew like, okay, like Billy's not going to be down with this, or he is.
Yeah.
And, but as you grow, like you can't do that as a founder. So you've got to write it down. You've got to and the way we do it is, so we've got 4 cultural values. We're innovators, we're iterators, we're lifelong learners, and we're scrappy. And then in our office, we have our breakout rooms, and they've got names that go with that as well. Like and then we have a story that goes with each one. So like with the learners, I love Arnold Schwarzenegger, and if you haven't read his autobiography, Total Recall, I recommend it to anybody.
Oh wow, that sounds like a good one.
and one of the things that like Arnold teaches in the book is like, hey, to get good at anything, like to get good at being a bodybuilder, I had to do my reps and my sets and eat my protein. To get good as an actor, I had to still had reps and sets and protein. It was just different, To get good at politics, same thing. To get at business, same thing. And so we call it getting your protein. And so are you going out? Are you learning something new that can help you? And it doesn't have to necessarily be with like your job today, but in your career. Like, are you doing something to help progress your career? Some of it's going to apply today to help you, shine at your current position. Some of it's going to help to prepare you for the next thing. But that's one of the things we talk about. It's like, hey, did you get your protein? And we'll go through like at least once a month and just talk about it at lunch. Like, okay, what protein are you working on?
Yeah, I like that. That's really awesome. Well, Billy, I really appreciate your time. You've been more than generous with it. And I appreciate your insight. Before I let you go, how can people get a hold of you? How can people find you? Yeah. All that good stuff. How can they get involved with ChatFunnels? Yeah.
So if you want to learn more about ChatFunnels, you can just go to our website, chatfunnels.com. To get a hold of me, would love to talk about anything we talked about today. If you want to follow up, let me know. If you just want to even learn more about ChatFunnels, like reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way. Just Billy Bateman, ChatFunnels. I'll come right up. And just reach out to me there, and that's the easiest way.